falling off, as it were. There's been a disillusionment with the way the judiciary has subsequently conducted itself in core areas of conflict resolution. In some areas they've done a great job. In some areas there are some serious problems. So it didn't end up being a moment for revolution. It ended up as being a transition, which is wonderful also, because transitions are slow change rather than radical change. And often in societies such as ours, transitions are to be welcomed rather than revolutions which go through everything, and stand things on their head, and then you're unable to replace the old order with something that is more dynamic and new, and we plunge into anarchy. Which is what happens wherever there is a season and hope for change, as you've seen, whether it is in Tunisia or Egypt, or wherever the stirrings of hope have led to change, the change has not always been what was thought possible. So anarchy instead has prevailed. So to that extent, the role of the judiciary today was supposed to be in a role to balance the executive with the powers of civil society, to uphold the values of law and constitution where politicians and dictators have trampled over. But in some ways, the judiciary has gone far beyond the constitutional mission statement thus defined. Some remarkable, extraordinary things are happening in this country. Not all of them are for the good. The use of suo motu powers in such a radical, transformative way in which the judiciary is now almost uncountable. Actually, it is uncountable. They elect themselves, they nominate themselves, no one can say anything against them. They have the power of life and death, not just over you and me, but over the constitution and parliament as well. Which is really a reversal of the way democracy works, or constitutional democracy works. And the ambitions of one man, or two men, or three persons, are now overriding constitutional constraints and judicial constraints. I think this is not good for society, and for civil society, and for the development of democracy. But it is in a sense inevitable. It's inevitable because when the pendulum swings, it always swings from one extreme to the other extreme. And it takes time to come and arrive at a balance in the middle. So it's not unexpected. The impetus and the movement and the dynamism with which the movement was launched, it was inevitable that the judges would end up being what they are today. And again, it is inevitable that this pendulum will come back. And hopefully in a year or two, we'll come somewhere in the middle. Right now, the judiciary is blocking a lot of attempts at good reform, whereas earlier it had blocked attempts at bad and corrupt practices. Now it is standing in the way of attempts to reform society or to move forward with the best of intentions by a democratically elected government. And therefore I have serious reservations about this highly interventionist role that the judiciary is playing. I mean, I can tell you that even I don't feel safe. A lot of us in the media are scared that at the whim or a drop of a hat, some judge may haul us up and sentence us for contempt of court or various other things. And there is no defense once you get to that sort. And I personally have experienced this, of judicial officers taking offense and threatening us with all sorts of things. So I think, this is the other extreme. But having said that, I think we are moving forward. I think we are learning our lessons, and this transition too will come to an end, and there will be some stability. One last thing, the military. I have long argued that the military has created a national security state, whereas it should have helped us create a social security state. This has been a long argument of mine from day one, that the military created a national security state along with the bureaucracy, the civil bureaucracy, and together the two of them have ruled this country. And most of our problems can be laid at their door, including the development or the non-development of politicians and constitutional politics. And now the time has come for the military to change, and for the military to accept the fact that it cannot rule and it cannot define the national interest or national security as it has done all these years. Because at the end of the day, this particular definition of national security this paradigm that the military is defined as the perennial enemy being India, this doesn't work anymore. It has brought us to this pass where India is galloping and we are down in the doldrums. In the old days, we had a problem on one border, now we have a problem on two borders. This politics has created the politics of non-state actors, which is very rare. When non-state actors become allied to the state, it creates all manner of problems. And we must be a unique state, where from day one, from the birth of Pakistan till today, non-state actors have played and continue to play a defining role. It is completely wrong. The state has this role to play. Non-state actors have no business playing this role. And I refer you to the use of the tribesmen in 1948 to launch them into Kashmir in defense of the national security paradigm. And I refer you to the jihad that we have conducted, and I refer you to all those groups that have been spawned because of that, and the fact that these very groups are today blocking the road to peace and stopping the peace dividend from coming our way. Therefore, if the judiciary is going to find an equilibrium, it's very important that the military should understand that the buck stops now. The military cannot halt the ship. The tail cannot wag the dog. You people, this country belongs to you. You have to rule this country. You have to define what is the interest of this country. Not men in uniform and not civil service. Everywhere in the world where progress has taken place, it's been businessmen, it's been traders who created the surplus, who created the conditions for democracy. Only in this country we do not have a political party that represents truly business interests. The Muslim League now is trying to do that. Unfortunately, as happens in newly developing countries, when things like this happen, there are no regulators. So privatization stalls, things are not transparent, cronyism begins to take place, and so on and so forth. And that's where the role of civil society and the media comes in. That's where you come in, that's where I come in. And it's very important for us to play that role. Having said that, I think the future is not very bright. I say that with a heavy heart. I say that because there is gridlock in government right now. And we are faced with an existential enemy now. The problem is that that existential enemy is not India anymore. That existential enemy is within. It is within our hearts, it's within our minds, it's within the distrust we carry of foreigners. It's our infighting, it's our sectarianism, it's our attempts to keep women down. It's everything that is wrong that is now rearing its head. And we are entering into very dangerous waters. We need firm, solid, good governance and visionary leadership. There are lots of question marks there. I'll be very happy to discuss with you in the Q&A my own sense of forwarding of what the next 2 years hold in store for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Najam sir. I would take the opportunity to ask the first question myself. You have explained Equation Pakistan really well as to what should be the role of, am I audible enough? No?
I don't know.
Is this okay? I completely agree, and I think this is commendable the way you explained Equation Pakistan as to what should be the role of the three pillars, the judiciary, what is their ambit and where they are overstepping their domain. At the same time, I believe that all of these three important actors, they work, the way public sees them, a lot of them is about creating a good perception also. And you very rightly said that the perception of the present incumbent government, PMLN, is very pro-business, and we all agree and understand that the way forward for Pakistan is to promote investment, pro-business environment, and to give it an economic boost. But unfortunately, as opposed to the pre-election perception, the pro-election perception is that the government doesn't have a clear roadmap for privatization, investment. What are the issues here? And why is there a missing link? So to begin with, I would like to know your thoughts on this.
Well, clearly, obviously, I'm not a government spokesman. I have my critique of what's happening. Let's be very clear about our things. I think the Prime Minister probably didn't have any idea of the complexity and enormity of the task facing him. In all my interactions with him, I've been stunned by the fact that he had no idea. I had an idea, socially he had an idea. But he genuinely thought that it was all very manageable. And he's now beginning to realize that it's not going to be hunky-dory. It's going to be very steep. And my sense is that this team, his team, who gave us a great manifesto and had all the solutions in the manifesto, seem to have completely forgotten what sort of solutions they were proposing in theory, and are now completely nonplussed about many issues. However, having said that, I think it's their due right to be given some time to get their house in order. If you recall, one of the first things that happened to this government, and frankly, if I'd been the finance minister at that time, I would have gone into a state of shock. And I'm sure as Haqdar did, when he presented his budget, the Supreme Court immediately stayed some of his proposals. And this was remarkable because this is unprecedented. All over the world, you've seen pictures of the British Chancellor coming in to 10 Downing Street or going into Parliament with a little bag containing the budget proposals. The day the budget proposals are announced all over the world, and including in the South continent, the budget is announced. The budget speech and the parliamentary approval is a given. Because if Parliament doesn't give its approval, the government will fall. So by the law, the Constitution, the way it stands, is that it's a given. The day the budget is announced, the budget proposals come into play. And in a completely unprecedented thing, which never happened in Pakistan, it's never happened anywhere else. The Chief Justice and his colleagues stayed that proposal. At the end of the day, it cost the government 10 to 12 million rupees, the stoppage, because then they went back and they backdated it. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. And so, they got off to a bad start. And similarly on the question of energy, if you recall, during the election campaign, the opponents of the PMLN had shown us videos of Shahbaz Sharif saying that he'll solve the electricity problem or the power problem in 3 months. Then he said 1.5 years. Then he said 3 years. And now I think it would be a miracle if we could resolve this issue in 3 years. That's how bad the situation is. Hard decisions have to be taken. Belt tightening has to be done. The problem, of course, always is that governments are extremely reluctant to tighten belts. My sense always is, and I've always given this free advice, nobody's ever taken it before. I've said, take all the hard decisions now when you come in the first 6 months. Let everybody abuse you. In 3 years, when the fruits begin to follow, when there's dividend, and the hard decisions are behind you, slowly things begin to turn around because of the hard decisions. People will forget about the hard decisions. And a year before the elections, when you've got everything done, when you've done everything and you have money in the kitty, but splurge. You can be irresponsible. You can throw money everywhere. And that's the way to run a government, a political government in a democracy. Unfortunately, what happens is when they come in, they're so overwhelmed by the enormity of the challenge. And they're so scared of the media and of you and me that they don't take the hard decisions. And then the Supreme Court steps in and also stops them from taking some hard decisions. because the Supreme Court is in a populist mood. Maybe some of the judges after they retire want to enter politics. I don't know. But certainly there's scope for politics in this country. So I think let's give them some time. I've seen some good signs. I've also seen some distressing signs. The good signs are they know what the problem is. You know, if you want to solve something, you first got to ask yourself what is the problem. If you don't ask this question, you can hardly find an answer. So they know what the problem is. The Prime Minister knows that he has to keep the military on his right side and he has to get the military to change its mind also. He knows. Without that, there's no movement. At the same time, the Prime Minister knows he has to get the economy moving. But there's no use in the economy. How do you get it moving? He knows he has to fight the Taliban. But he knows public opinion is divided on the issue. Some people think you don't fight your own people, quote unquote. And some people think these are not your own people. And some people think they may be your own people. But why not? One always fights one's own people, depending on the circumstances of the case. So there's confusion on this issue. And without this issue being resolved, I dare say, without terrorism being uprooted one way or the other, this country and this economy cannot move forward. There's just absolutely no way that without certainty, stability, no one will come to this country. And today the race is on for markets and for foreign investment. And that's where the notion of emerging markets comes in. That's all we've done. And no nation is an island, least of all a country like ours, which is poor in natural resources, except for some of the things that you produce. And so therefore, I think it's not fair to judge a government in the first 90 days, nor indeed in the first year or so. 2 or 3 years down the line, either this government will have survived and done some good things, and all of us will reassess this government, or believe you me, you and I will throw this government out. The problem is when you throw a government out, one doesn't always know what you're going to replace it with, and that's where the other question comes.
So the good thing is that we do at least know that the diagnostic stage is there. Anwar, I think you would probably like to start with something.
Yeah. I think the first question that I would like to ask on behalf of you first we are sitting here, can you guys hear me? Is that what is this studio all about? Can you tell us a bit about this studio? So because a lot of people ask this question, that has become, a symbol of the secrets that you share with us. So first thing is, and based on the information that the media is probably giving to you, can you tell us that when the army chief retires latest this year, what's going to happen? Are going to get extension? How is the government going to respond to that?
See, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty.
And finally, also again, bringing your area for the Chief Justice is also retiring later this year. So how do you see scenarios?
I can speculate about the army chief, but not about the Chief Justice. He watches our programs with great concern, if I may say so. Studio. There was this program that Munib and I were doing about 4 years ago. And I said something and he said to me, how do you know that? तो अंग्रेजी का मुहावरा ना little bird told me. तो मैंने एक चिड़िया ने मुझे बताया. So that's the origin of this चिड़िया business. What is this चिड़िया? The little bird. But where is this little bird? Who told me? There must be somebody who tells me something. Well, the thing is that I am 65 years old. I've been in journalism for 40 years. In 40 years, I've lived the politics of this country. I've breathed it, I've lived it. I know each politician by first name. They know me. I've often conspired with them and I've often suffered because of them. So I know how they think. I don't have to sit outside to know what a cabinet meeting, who is going to say what in a cabinet meeting. I've served in a cabinet, I know what happens in a cabinet. I know what sort of people will say what sort of things. I know what sort of summaries the bureaucrats will pull out, what they will say. It is so predictable, it's unbelievable if you've been in there. That's the first thing. Secondly, the thing is that in 40 years, I've made very, very good friends. And these are people in all the right places. The trick is to guard their identity. The trick is to protect them. And once you're able to assure them chiefster, you are here, you're trying to protect the national interest, you're trying to encourage a lively debate, you're not blackmailing anyone, that your journalism is a journalism of some principles at least, that you will be responsible. Once you're able to establish such a reputation, then people in sensitive places share information. The trick there is to realize whether the information they are sharing with you is selective or not. Sometimes they will share information with you which is very selective, which is aimed at getting you to go in a particular line, push a particular line of argument. You have to be very careful. That means it's not sufficient to have one source for one story or for one piece of information. That's not good journalism. Good journalism is if you have more than one source and a credible insider source that gives you insider information that you can check and counter-check. So over the years, one has built a system. When I see young people in journalism and then all sorts of allegations and stories fly about, I sort of sit there with my head in my hands and say nobody's doing their homework. They don't even, they're speculating. A, their knowledge of history is poor. B, their knowledge of politics is poor. They're simply speculating for the sake of speculating. And that is why, at the end of the day, you can speculate endlessly. It depends on the assumptions you make. Logic is based on certain assumptions. Once you establish certain assumptions, you can go anywhere with logic. And so therefore, that is what happens. So my approach has always been different. My approach has been to temper sources of information with analysis. I've always said there can be no good analysis without good information. But people who have good information don't necessarily make good analysis because they can try and use that information for vested interests or to try and push particular ideologies or lines. And that's the problem with journalism. If you have good information and you don't know how to analyze, you're in trouble. If you know how to analyze and you have good information but you misuse it, there's trouble. So that's the origin of the chidiya. There's not one chidiya, ladies and gentlemen. There are chidiyas all over the place. There are chidiyas in such places that the chidiyas would be afraid to realize that they were chidiyas. And they don't talk on telephones, which means that I have to do a lot of legwork and to meet a lot of people secretly in order to get real information. The second question was that about the future of the Army Chief and the Chief Justice. Well, again, speculations aside, I don't know, is the media here? I'm from the media, I'm very scared of the media. And I know I'm also scared of all you guys tweeting all over the place. They're more dangerous than the media.
That is another chidiya.
No, that is the worst thing possible. Because, I can say something and somebody over here is going to say, Old Sethi said this. So, I shall measure my words because we are on a very dangerous territory. My sense is that both gentlemen will go home. My sense is that one gentleman doesn't want to go home. I think so far I'm safe. My sense is the Prime Minister wants both of them to go. My sense is that, it's not my sense, this is my analysis. My analysis is that once both of them go home, they will not stay in this country. That's a prediction. My sense is that we call ourselves the land of the pure, right? But there is the land of the purest also. And my sense is that the land of the purest will play some sort of role. I do want to go on Hajj one day. I think that's about all I can say.
Anwar, I think this was, it seemed like a very innocent question, but was absolutely loaded one. So I'll ask Fatma to chip in here.
Just referring to your earlier comments about the struggle between and the power struggle that is happening partition time, where I think the priorities perhaps may not have been set right, where you talked about vested interests being put forward before national unity or nation building, if you will. And I think it goes beyond just the last 2-3 decades, perhaps. The situation that Pakistan is in at this point in time, and over a period of time of successive military governments or successive democratic governments, which in most cases weren't allowed to complete their terms, there has been a chaos that has ensued, and perhaps that has affected the way that these 3 pillars function. And what has happened is that every pillar has taken its own course of action and listed down their own set of priorities. So at some point in time, we've lost sight of, in my opinion, we've lost sight of, are we representing Pakistan, or are we representing the military, or are we representing the economy, or are we representing, justice? There is no cohesion in the way these 3 pillars work, and I think that is the main, or should be the main priority of the present government or next governments as well, to ensure that your priorities is firmly focused on the nation building of Pakistan, creating that national unity, and all of these 3 pillars are there to serve the nation. It's not the other way around. And when you allow them to defragment and not be aligned, then chaos ensues and there's no governance body, there's no check and control, there's no monitoring mechanism will put them back onto the path. In that situation, and you also highlighted that it does seem a bit bleak, I would say that there's a lot of passion and energy in this country as well. There are a lot of people who are really committed within Pakistan and outside Pakistan to make a difference. And you can see that. You can see examples, success stories of very young boys and girls, of very young entrepreneurs who are really committed to building a new Pakistan. You see that mindset, and I'm not talking about PTI, I'm just talking generally there is a fervor. Do you feel that that passion and that energy and that enthusiasm in our next generations will actually stand up to this lack of cohesiveness and alignment in these 3 pillars of state?
During the Musharraf years, I saw something interesting happening. Around 2005, 2006, a lot of young people who studied here at LUMS and elsewhere and had gone abroad to study started coming back to Pakistan. There was growth, there was dynamism in the economy, operations were being set up, the stock exchange was flourishing. Young people who left Pakistan in search of education jobs decided to come back. I saw this happening at first hand. And then what I see now is different. What I see now, despite what you say, I see a lot of young people wanting to leave Pakistan. I see a lot of old people wanting to leave Pakistan. There is a sense of doom and gloom, a sense of uncertainty. And this is very depressing. I will not take names, but you will probably guess who I'm referring to. One of the most important, if not the most important, personalities, politicals of Punjab, sat me down and in the course of a kasha, suddenly turned to me and said, "Sir, do you think Pakistan will survive?" This is a man in whose hands we have put our destiny. I was stunned by the question and by his look of depression and acute depression on his face. And I realized that he was overwhelmed by the burden that he was carrying. And much the same can be said of another very, very important person in Islam. I said to him, he asked me how I was faring trying to manage the cricket board. And I said, it's a pit of snakes and it's a terrible situation out there. And I don't know why somebody pushed me in. And it not so much the lack of balance between the 3 pillars of the state, as the fact that the executive, the judiciary and the army are in no mood to work together. They're in no mood to have truth and reconciliation. More than anything else, this country needs a heavy dose, not of NAB, but of truth and reconciliation. The truth of the lies we've spoken to the people of this country. Reconciliation with those who we've victimized. Because as you said, this is now a national agenda. We all have to work together to save this country. Unfortunately, that national agenda of truth and reconciliation, where we all accept the error of our ways, we all say that all of us have made mistakes. The army has made mistakes, the judiciary has made mistakes, the executive has made mistakes, the politicians have made mistakes, the bureaucracy has made mistakes. We've all made mistakes. The business community has made mistakes. I can spell out to you the sort of mistakes these were. That's not a litany of abuse of power and privilege. That's not happening. The rich are still not paying taxes. They're not paying the sort of taxes they ought to pay. The government is still inefficient and leaking like a sieve. The poor are still unprotected. Our defense expenditures are exorbitant for a country like ours. We're in an arms race which we can't afford. The sort of arms race that brought the great Soviet Union down. We're talking about national honor and passion when we should be talking of national interest and logic and survival. No nation is an island. We cannot spurn the world and tell them that we are not part of the global village and you can go to hell and we don't care. This is a sign of impotence. It's not a sign of strength. When we protest on the streets against some sacrilege outburst somewhere or the other, we are not proving anything. When we shut down the country because of some stupid non-idiot who's said something somewhere in the four corners of the world, we are not advancing our own cause. This is a sign of impotence. This is not a sign of strength. The sign of strength is not singular identity. The sign of strength is a plural identity in this global world. You're a woman, you're a mother, you're a professional, you can be a politician. You have several identities. You're not just a Muslim, first and last, and be all and end all. In fact, my contention has always been that we should not bring religion into politics. The minute you bring religion into politics, you either do bad politics or you spoil religion. I've always given this example of a person with a clean white shirt, which is a pure shirt, like religion is pure. The minute you play politics with it, you're dirtying your religion, you're undermining it, you're undermining yourself, which is what's been happening over here, which is why we get such a bad thing. But these are larger issues about identity. In my time, when I was growing up, somebody asked me, who are you? I'd say, I'm a Pakistani. Today, half of you will say I'm a Muslim, and half of you will think of saying whether I'm a Punjabi or a Baloch or a Pakistani. I'm really saddened by this. Nobody is taking your Islam away from you, for God's sake. But stand up for your country. I once had a debate with a group of religious scholars on this whole business of jihad. And I was surrounded by them, and I had no idea that I would be pitted against them. When I went there, I thought there'd be other more enlightened people. In the end, it came down to one question. They said, jihad is the be-all and end-all of our existence. Okay, let's move forward. I said, okay, if jihad leads you to a nuclear annihilation which destroys Pakistan, would that be justified? And they said, yes. I said, well, in that case, I'm sorry, I disagree. I don't want Pakistan to be hurt in any way. Pakistan is not negotiable. This is my country, this is my nationalism, this is my identity. I'm one of 2 billion Muslims in the world, but I'm one of only 200 million Pakistanis. This is what I am. By being a Pakistani, you don't take away from my Islam or from my religion.
My question is related to the power struggle you talked about. There are actually 3 pillars we have mentioned here. In my opinion, there is a 4th emerging pillar, which is media. and all the issues or ills, in my opinion, taking place in society. We talk about privatization and the problems, and then there's a power struggle between court and the government. Media plays a pivotal role, and in case of Pakistan, I guess the media is playing a very negative role. So don't you think there should be an accountability? And most of all these pillars are basically trying to have a struggle to become unaccountable. And so far, I think 3 of them have succeeded. The only premier is left. So isn't it unfair to the premier?
I think you hit the nail on the head. The thing is that in the old days, the media was not powerful. In the old days, we were shackled by the executive, just as the judiciary was shackled by the executive. And I remember that the executive could silence us just as it could silence the judiciary vincently. And now we have a situation when the executive is powerless to silence us, or the judiciary. So, if in the old days the executive was unaccountable, because the judiciary was a handmaiden to the executive, and the media was not powerful because all our powers were curtailed by the executive, but today it's the opposite. Today we are unaccountable and the judiciary is unaccountable. And both of us, in a sense, unaccountable forces are holding the executive to account. So therefore, you can expect excesses to take place. I mean, the situation is so bad that even if the executive is right and the media is wrong, the executive has no redress right now. Any one of you over here, if you were wronged by the media, you could not go to a court of law today to redress your grievance. Why? Because there is an unholy nexus now developing between the courts and the media. The media is defending the courts blindly, and the courts will not allow any criticism or any silencing of this media. And I think this is not good for society. However, having said that, it's once again the theory of the pendulum. These things will happen. When societies are developing and the pendulum starts swinging, one day there's complete freedom, the next day there's complete anarchy. And in the course of time, as water finds its balance, the media and the judiciary will also find their balance. And I look forward to that day, because there can be nothing more dangerous than an unaccountable media, especially a media which is by and large, and I must admit this, by and large not terribly educated, not terribly responsible. And a lot of people in the media who are the stars of today, unfortunately, come from backgrounds where their educational qualifications, their formal educational qualifications are pretty minimal. Because they're good talkers, they're glib, they're either good looking or they're glib, they get away. I was thinking, they're advertising these days, they're looking for an idol, somebody music, right? And I would love to do a program on television where we would ask people to come in and become anchors. Test their skills. How much knowledge do they have? What do they know about Pakistani history? How educated are they? Do they even know the difference between privatization and deregulation and what is a strategic interest and what is not? When they comment on all these things all the time. And financial journalism, and Ms. Leems are sitting over here and all of you are from the management school. There probably are not more than 5 people in the entire Pakistani media who can sit with you and have a reasoned, sensible discussion on some of the issues that you are looking at today. That tells you how bad the situation is. When at the end of the day, it's the economy stupid that makes everything work. And our problem in the media is we have no idea of how government works, how the economy works and what is needed and what is not. Over and above that, we have another problem. And that is the problem of the haves and have-nots. The media in Pakistan is broadly lower middle class. It is angry, it is alienated, it is resentful of the rich, of the powerful. So therefore, it lashes out all the time. And this is unfortunately, the casualty in all this is both knowledge and credibility.
share my small example on this particular issue. I conducted a training for journalists. It was on financial literacy, and one of the journalists stood up and said, "What is an arm's length transaction?" And I said, "Hang on, don't you write about this?" He said, "Yes, I do, but I've got absolutely no clue of what it means." So anyway, we've had a good round of what the situation is. The diagnostic is there. The problems have been identified. We need to move forward. And with this, I'll now open the floor for question and answer, questions to the audience, and whosoever wants to ask the question, just keep it very, very brief, and just keep it very, very brief. Specify your name and if you are where you're from, class, student, faculty, guest, or whatever. So I'll just begin with the gentleman here.
I'm Najam Sethi, executive MD 2005. So as we just mentioned, the biggest problem right now we're facing is terrorism. Terrorism. Good Taliban, bad Taliban. So in our middle class, which makes all the difference, there's a huge confusion. And media is doing all it can to enhance that confusion. So we need a very simple solution. So I want you to give us a simple solution how to eradicate this confusion and bring the nation on one page. So good Taliban, bad Taliban, this Taliban, that Taliban. That's question one. And the second question is,
Please,
it's a very simple question. You talked about this bit of snakes, which is PCP, of which you are the chairman right now. So, and you are also, I mean, there is a dialogue between the judiciary and, so can you tell us something because you're very passionate about the whole nation? And are you, your diplomacy, doing something to bring Muhammad Ali back into
लेकिन जी उन्होंने दिल के सवाल पूछे। देखिए, your first question is really needs a long answer. I can't give you a short answer. The reason is, in order to be fair, there is a difference of opinion on this issue, and on this issue of who are the Taliban, where do they come from, what is the origin of this terrorism, how is the origin related to the problem, and is it the past that impinges on us, or is the future different? Is this our war? Is this not our war? Is it because of the drones, or is it something else? Is there a great game going on? What is the strategy of the Taliban? How are we to deal with them? This is I would need at least an hour to be able to link everything together. And I don't want to be irresponsible, giving one-line answers. But if you do want a one-line answer. The one-line answer is that the army chief is for once right, that this is an existential crisis, and that India is no longer the perennial enemy, the enemy is within. And if we don't sort this out, we have it. After Afghanistan, we will be the next. My great sense of foreboding is that because we lack a consensus around we deal with this issue, time is passing us by. By next year, the Americans will have all but packed their bags and gone home. And we'll be left with the Taliban. Taliban, in my view, there are three dimensions to the Taliban. There's the Afghan Taliban in Lahore, who controls southern Afghanistan, and whose franchise is based in Uzbekistan, which is a base area for them. It's a base area from which to carry out activities across the border. The second dimension is Al-Qaeda. First it was Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, trying to create a base for world revolution, Islamic revolution from Afghanistan. And then after the American intervention, and the passing of Osama bin Laden, first physically and first ideologically and then physically later, came Kazakhstan. We have Chechens, we have Uzbeks, we have people from China, we have people from Egypt, we have people from the Arab world, we have Malaysians, Indonesians, they're all there. And they are there because they believe that they have to change the world and that they have to drive everybody to paradise at the point of their death. That's their belief. They're not afraid to die, they're fighting for a cause. And probably in their mind there is justification because their cause springs from the excesses of American imperialism all over the world. And before American imperialism, great colonial masters. So there's ample justification. Having said that, there is a third dimension. And the third dimension is the Pakistani Taliban. I've always said that the Pakistani Taliban were created by the first two. They were created by the first two in order to secure permanent base in Afghanistan. The Afghan Taliban and Al-Qaeda know that they can never seize Kabul again. The global powers and the regional powers will never allow that to happen. Even if they seize Kabul, one B-52 raid, they will be on the run again as they were in 2000. So they know that Kabul is gone, but they need a state. And the state that they are now eyeing is southern Afghanistan and northern Pakistan. And Balochistan. That's where the next Afghan state, Taliban state, that's their destiny. That's their fate, that's what they want. That is why and they're all together. They appear not to be together, they appear to be good and bad, but actually there is no such thing. There is a concerted Al-Qaeda Taliban strategy to carve out a new state, a new emirate from Afghanistan and Pakistan. That's their global strategy. And that's why they want Waziristan, and that's why their unconditional, that's why their conditional offer is two things. They want a withdrawal of the Pakistan army from Fatah, and they want landing the drones. Those are the only two things that stop them from achieving their objective. Whether we like it or not, whether we like the drones or not, whether we like the army operation or not, those are the only two factors that stop them from achieving their aim. If they are successful, they will take Swat, they will take Neem, they will take everything, as they once did before we were able to throw them out. At least they were the census of that time. And if you're able to create that state, then I really don't mind if Kabul is in a state of perennial civil war. But none of us will be able to lead a normal life in this country, because their job will be to disrupt everything in this country from that base area of the emirate that they will seek to create. That's why they don't want peace, why they are warring. That's why every time there is talk of peace, something happens. It's not that the military does something, and it's not a foreign hand. The foreign hand here is Al-Qaeda. It is not India. It is not America. The worst thing that would happen from India's point of view is if the Taliban would have power in Pakistan. The Taliban's next aim would be to overrun India, starting with Kashmir, and browsing Indian Muslims, where there is a lot of grievance. So this is that sort of strategy that we use. Unfortunately, over here we are confronted with good Taliban, bad Taliban, peace negotiations. These are our people. Let them open an office here and so on. I get depressed sometimes because this is not only outrageous talk, it is dangerous talk. It is dangerous because when you give the example of Doha, some friends say, well, the Americans are negotiating with the Taliban, they allow the Taliban to open an office in Doha. Why can't we allow them to open an office here and negotiate with them? Well, my friend, it's different. The first thing is that Doha office, the government of Afghanistan never accepted. And when the Taliban showed their true colors by hoisting the flag of the emirate of the Taliban, then their true colors were shown and the office was closed down because it was seen as an embassy of the Taliban. It was a claim to legitimacy as the sole representative of the Afghan. Tomorrow you allow the Taliban to formally open an office in Uzbekistan. It's acknowledging that Uzbekistan is seceded and is now part of a new emirate belonging to the Taliban. This is not wrong. You don't do this. No state talks to terrorists. No state bargains with terrorists. Pakistan comes first. At the end of the day. There is a second question. had absolutely no interest in this. And Nawaz Sharif Sahab pushed me into it, threw me into it. And he said, it's a great challenge. And like all of you, I am a passionate believer in cricket. And like all of us. And I thought, okay, this is a management problem. And we'll be able to resolve it. Unfortunately, and by the way, it is a management problem. There's nothing else. It is a management problem. Once you graduate, you people will be eminently qualified to run the cricket board. However, I say it's a pit of snakes. Because there are so many vested interests who want the status quo to continue. Whether it's in the Pakistan Cricket Board, or whether it's in the media, or whether it's in the cricketers, whether it's in the clubs, whether it's in the regional associations, whether it's in the district associations. This is altogether unfair. The Pakistan Cricket Board is facing bankruptcy. In 3 years, we will be bankrupt if we carry on like this. We have 960 employees, 500 or 600 directly, and the others for whom we pay. We really don't need more than 60. Over the years, we've accumulated this. It's a classic case. I mean, I'd be happy to know you should do an exercise in the PCB. Just put this up as a project here for your class. I've just brought professors into the PCB, and I've asked them to do a forensic analysis of how badly they are managed. And this is, the report is so thick. And it's a classic case of mismanagement and corruption. But the courts are stopping me from moving. And the courts have their own vested interests. And a lot of the cricketers in the PCB, and a lot of our board members, everybody has a vested interest. So it looks as though if my hands continue to be tied, I will not stay. I have twice asked the Prime Minister to relieve me or empower me. And my sense is that sometime this month we will have a solution, good or bad. And then we can make it work. But if you're looking for great victories by the Pakistani team, what can I say? I don't want to demotivate anyone. This is a young team. I wish it, all the luck in the world. We've tried to bring the best people forward. We've tried to cut out Safarish and favoritism and all the rest of it. But it's still there. Unfortunately, I can't even change the selection committee. I can't even appoint a chief selector because the courts have tied my hands. But once my hands are untied, you will see action. And my sense is that in the beginning it may not seem right, but in time to come you will see that it will be part of a strategy to regalvanize Pakistan cricket, to reform it, to bring it to power, to give our youngsters the talent, the treatment, the training, and the incentives they deserve, and to put Pakistan on the map of cricket again. We are not there today. It's a long way off. There is a lot of talent, but that talent is misdirected, it's untrained, it's wrong. And the worst cases, the worst problem, it's uneducated. In the old days, you got cricketers coming in from good schools, you got cricketers coming in from colleges and universities. The cricketers we today are from the streets, they're from out there. They have a prodigious talent, great motivation, wonderful sense of belief in themselves, wanting to be successful. But there's very little here. And you can't play cricket without this. It's not just a question of throwing the ball, it's a question of batting and bowling according to a plan. That's what the game is all about. And when I went there, they said we had 3 analysts. And I said, what are the analysts doing? And they said, well, their job is to analyze everything with computers and to show the batsman that this is the error you made, this is what is wrong with your stance, this is the way the bowler should be bowling, if the field is set accordingly, and this is how the sector should be bowled. And I went to and I had a full session with them, and I asked them, how many times have your cricketers been brought here to see this? There was a stunned silence. So, at the end of the day, education is very, very important. And I'm trying to groom the more educated amongst our talented people to be the future leaders of Pakistan cricket. They may not be very bright on the field, but I'm always reminded of Mike Brearley, the English captain with the greatest number of strategic victories under his belt. He was an opening batsman for England during my time in the 60s. And he hardly ever scored any runs. And I've always asked my English friends, why do you keep Brearley? And they would say, because he has a brain.
Amir.
Yes, it's a very important question and it's very relevant. I have initiated a move in the ICC to try and rehabilitate Amir. It is very difficult. You can imagine how hostile they are. The ICC is taking a very hard line against cheating. Very, very hard line, and rightly so. Enough is enough. This game is now worth billions. You know, one ball bowled here and one ball bowled there will lead you millions. Bookies are running the game. And we, and all of us cannot be prisoners of bookies and betting and cheating. Here we watch the game because we think that's the way the game is. We're not watching a game that is rigged. So, therefore, I'm fighting for Amir. As we speak, the PCB has obtained a legal opinion from a British QC, Queen's Counsel, which favors Amir's leniency in Amir's case. There will be a meeting on the 16th of this month of a review committee that has been set up by the ICC on my pleading to review Amir's case. And we will be presenting that review committee with a detailed legal briefing, which will hopefully enable them to take a more sympathetic view. I shall be going to England, meeting with this committee on the 15th and on the 16th. They will be meeting, and then on the 17th there will be an ICC board meeting in which I have already put this item on the agenda. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. We will do our best. The rest is up to them.
Next question here, but very, very brief. Just.
Sir, I am Mohammed Abbas, MB 2014. So my question is, given the political history of political struggle that we have in Pakistan, what do you think is a better form of government, a parliamentary democracy or is it a judicial system that we have in America?
Again, wonderful question. I've thought long and hard about this. I must tell you that I was a firm believer in the prime ministerial system. The origin of my beliefs goes back to my student days in Cambridge, when one of the questions I faced in my exam was, is the British Prime Minister more powerful than the American President? And from that time onwards, I've been grappling with this issue. And I've always supported the prime ministerial system. But I have now come to the conclusion that this system doesn't work for a number of reasons. And I think the system that we need to adapt is the American system, where there is a separation of powers between Parliament and all the lawmakers and the executive, and also the whole system of mayors and local government and the autonomy that the states have. More states, more devolution, more distance between the executive and Parliament, so that there is more accountability and delivery. No more than 2 terms and delivery. So, and of course a direct election to the presidency. Having said that, I'm sure a lot of you will be smiling, because if there were to be a direct election to the presidency, Imran Khan would have a very good chance.
Sir, I am from India, and given the negative role of the media, as you have already discussed.
Apna naam bhi specify.
My name is Najam Sethi from MBA class of 2014. So, given the role of media in all these, in imbalancing all 3 pillars, so you are a senior journalist, the nation listens to you, respects you. So, isn't it your responsibility to do a show on the qualification of a media person?
I must tell you that I have done some of these shows. You need to go on YouTube and search for them. But I have discussed the problems of, you can. I have discussed the problems of the media and the issues that we are facing. And I often speak pretty frankly about it, which is why a lot of people in the media don't like me.
We have a question there and one over here, and then we'll take you. You and Lucia. Yes.
Imran, thank you.
Maybe you can understand that. You're asking about the role of the army.
Yes, so the army has sort of tried to portray an image of not being the power center in Pakistan under General Kayani.
Okay, very good question. Brilliant. Yes, you're absolutely right. General Kayani has gone out of his way to suggest that Kayani is aloof from politics. I don't believe a word of it. Army and General Kiani remain the singular most powerful force of man in this country. Just look at General Kiani's track record. He was, in 2004, he was Director General of Military Operations. Then he became Director General of Military Intelligence. Then he became the Director General of the ISI. Then he became Army Vice Chief. Then he became the Army Chief. Then he got an extension for 3 years. This is a man who literally pulled all the levers of power for at least 10 years. And so therefore, General Kiani is the man who negotiated on behalf of General Musharraf and Benazir Bhutto on the NRO and the journey of returning back to Pakistan. General Kiani is the man who elevated or helped elevate General Musharraf to the presidency. General Kiani is the man who befriended the Americans and then antagonized the Americans with all sorts of consequences for Pakistan. General Kiani is the man who dug up General Pasha, who became the head of the ISI, dug him out of semi-retirement. He was about to retire as a Major General under Musharraf. But General Kiani promoted him and made him the VP ISI. And General Pasha's handling of the ISI, well, a lot needs to be written about it, and I guess there should be written about it. You all remember Memogate and how it destabilized the Zardari government. You remember, you know how the Supreme Court has highlighted the role of the army and intelligence agencies in Balochistan and missing persons. So therefore, the army remains a very important player. And you also know that when Nawaz Sharif first came to power in the second time in 1999, he wanted to make peace in India. And General Musharraf did Kargil, that derailed everything for many years. And then when Mr. Zardari came to power, and he wanted to make peace with India. Mumbai happened. And you also know that now Nawaz Sharif has come back and he wants to make peace with India, and the LOC has got fought out over here. So the thing is that there are very powerful vested interests in this country. And if truth be told, the army is really, the military is a corporation. It's military incorporated. It has its strengths, it has its interests, and it will not let go of those corporate interests. And those corporate interests are defined not just by big business. Incidentally, the army in Egypt is big business. And the army in some of these third world countries and other countries, Arab countries, is big business. So business is mixed up with power and power is mixed up with politics. And therefore, and hence a definition of national security and the national interest is derived, which is not necessarily in the national interest. And this is an argument I continue to have with my friends in the army, that who are you to tell us what the national interest is? We have every right to define the national interest. That doesn't wash with them. And they are the ones who have done it.
Getting back to class of 89, every class of 89. Chief Justice is leading in 2 months. Why is he evading the government?
What? Can you stand up? I can't see you.
Chief Justice is leading in 2 months. He actually has said that they both are good. Now you just said that Kiani is rather the architect of the era, like you said. Why are they doing all this? They're leaving in 3 months, right? I mean, okay, army is the corporation, but what about Chief Justice? Why is he derailing the government? Why is he putting speedbreakers?
Look, I will speculate about the army and the army chief. I can't say anything about it. I'll be very honest with you. Off the record, when you see me, I tell you. I can't in this audience tell you what I think the Chief Justice is thinking, what he means to do, why he's doing certain things. I can only say that the Honorable Chief Justice is doing all the honorable things that Honorable Chief Justice. That's for the record. As far as General Kiani is concerned, General Kiani is after all the army chief, and the army chief after all represents the army and the military as an institution. So it doesn't really matter whether he is about to retire. He still represents the interests of the army and the military. The new military high command that he will leave behind are people who will be picked, chosen, selected, handpicked by him. So there will be continuity. And there will be continuity in the philosophies and beliefs of the Pakistan Army as they undergo or they are confronted with the new challenges. It's very rare to find beyond Major General. Up to Major General, you will find people in the army with very interesting non-conformist views about certain things. At times, you will Lieutenant General, there's a flattening out, absolutely flattening out of ideology, views, and so therefore to expect an army chief to be the harbinger of radical change is unrealistic. The army is a status quo institution, and it will remain. It is wedded to the status quo. And in that status quo, it is the central, most self-righteous force in this country.
So my name is Tara, and I am a graduate of Business School 2005. My question is, as you said, it's bleak. The situation is pretty bleak, and that feeling of helplessness is setting in now, and it's very strong. If my vote does not have the power, if I cannot go out and vote, be satisfied, I was heard, what exactly can we, what are we supposed to do? Where do we go from here? As a civil society, we are completely dead now. We just wait and see what's going on. How do we play an active role?
Look, I can only say the following. The sort of enthusiasm and passion that I saw in the people of Pakistan, especially those who had been cynical in the past and who came out to vote for Imran Khan, we need that sort of passion to drive this country. But let me tell you, the facts are that you are still in a minority. You are not in a majority. This country's politics is ethnic. This country's politics is regional. This country's politics is religious. This country's politics is all screwed up. So, if people in Gulbarga and people in Defence Karachi are enthusiastic about a particular party or a particular leader, that does not automatically translate into votes. I can tell you, I asked this question. First of all, I can easily admit to you that I had forecast, personally, I had forecast about 40 seats for the PTI as a national level. And I had forecast about 90 for the This was based on not just my own observations, travels, history and knowledge of this Punjab mission, but also various media teams that we had sent out who came back with facts and figures. And that despite certain things, there was a strong underlying strength in the LE. My sense was that Imran really woke up to his true potential after the big Jalsa had gone. And from the time of the big Jalsa to the election was just barely 1 year. My sense is that if he had 2 years, his showing would be very different. My sense is that if he'd organized his party elections immediately after the Jalsa and been done with them in 3 months, he would have had 6 months at least to organize his party so that the party would take root and galvanize itself and get organized. I am absolutely, I constantly interacted with him, and his argument was that it's difficult to get the elections done. There are all sorts of problems. And at the end, as it turned out, he ended up holding the elections and trying to get his party together right at the end minute. My sense is that those who supported him, if they stick with him, despite whatever disillusionment they may suffer, my sense is he will learn on the job. He's new to it. He'll learn on the job. Some of the people he's picked up are not worthy of traveling with him. He will learn. He will understand their limitations. He will not be in such a hurry. He's only 60, so he will not be in such a hurry. People in this country, become politicians, become leaders and lead countries at 70 and 75. So there's no reason why you should think that this is the end of the line. And there's no reason why those of you who support him should abandon him. Stick with him. Don't buy everything he says. Challenge him. Challenge him according to your own assumptions and your own understanding. He will be the richer for it, and your party will be, those who support the PTI, your party will be the richer for it. But there is a sense of drift in the party. There is a sense of lacking a foothold even in KP. Imran himself is extremely well-intentioned, very, very sincere. I've known him literally for the last 30 years when he was playing cricket. We were together in England, senior to him obviously. But known him all my life. His heart is in the right place. But he's been too much of an international list to focus on Pakistan the way Pakistan needs to be focused on. And I think if he devotes enough time and energy to learning on the job, maybe he'll do a better job next time. And we certainly want him to do a better job next time. We need variety, we need a challenge, we need fresh ideas, and we need new teams. There's no doubt. I have conducted myself reasonably well on this. I was very scared of you media.
Sethi sir, is it working?
Let me see.
You have, during your course of talk, alluded to a balance. Right now, pendulum swinging in one direction or the other, and it appears that we are going through a turf war between these. Turf war is going on between institutions. My question is that how much do you think this is institutional, and how much is it because of the individuals that are heading those institutions? I'll refer what it appears to me during the last 5 years. What happened was that we had the army chief, we had the chief justice, we had president and the opposition leader. In my personal opinion, all individuals had their own personal weaknesses. And it appeared to me sometimes that boundaries were also very well set, that they had actually defined that these are the boundaries beyond which we will not go as far as the tussle between the institutions is concerned. Because every time it appeared that there is a stalemate between army or the judiciary. At the same time, we saw instances where government and the opposition leader, I think the fact that, in my opinion, each had skeletons in their closet, because of which we saw a balance also. My question is that if we have a person at the helm of affairs who does not have any skeletons in his closet, how can he influence the outcome, in the sense that that personality may have a status of a breaker of the game, that he can, perhaps he has that credibility. All the leaders, in my opinion, had a credibility gap. Even the Chief Justice, the army, they all had their weaknesses, and that created barriers which results in also in status quo. तो मेरा आपसे ये सवाल है कि जी फॉर एग्जांपल एक यहाँ पे लीडर आता है जिसका पास कोई नहीं है. मैं एग्जांपल आपको नैब चेयरमैन का दे देता हूँ. इट अपेयर्स दैट देयर वाज अ क्लियर कट अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि जी ये बियॉन्ड दिस स्टेज नहीं जाएगा, बिकॉज आप अगर गवर्नमेंट को करते हैं तो आपके अपने एक्ट्स जो हैं वो भी एक प्रोसेस चेन ऑफ रिएक्शन स्टार्ट कर देते हैं, जिससे आप खुद भी अफेक्ट हो जाते हैं. मेरा सवाल ब्रीफली ये है कि इस चार की जगह फॉर एग्जांपल इमरान खान आ जाए जिसका पास्ट कोई नहीं है, वो कितना आउटकम को चेंज कर सकता है.
ठीक है, ओके. Well, basically, two parts to the question. First of all, the existing lot of politicians, excluding Imran, have lost and have failed and have vested interests in one form or another. So how can you expect them to bring about radical change? Part partly because such radical change would affect their own fortunes. So that's the assumption, or that's the opening statement. Following which the question is, isn't then Imran Khan best suited to lead? Am I right? Okay. The first part is absolutely true. You cannot expect radical change from people who being part of the system or being part of the problem and are now trying to reinvent themselves as part of the solution. Okay, that's true. But having said that, I think people do change. People do diminish their sense of greed, does diminish over time. Paid bhar jata hai, to shayad itni greed nahi rehti, if you know what I'm saying. And sometimes they actually learn on the job from their mistakes. So therefore, I don't think it's fair to write off people just because they failed in the past. The democratic system is a system that keeps throwing out people. You keep going through the cleansing phase of the washing machine, which is why there are political parties. Corruption is probably India, of course, and the Americans are far more corrupt than we are. Their corruption is institutionalized in many ways. Ours is more haphazard and more anarchic. But at the end of the day, the Pentagon probably is the most corrupt organization in history. The amount of kickbacks and corruption that takes place in the back of budget and so on. So let's not go there. Coming to Imran. Look, I said earlier that there's no doubt of his sincerity. There's no doubt about the fact that he probably has fewer skeletons in his cupboard. If he has any, they're probably of personal nature rather than of institutional or economic or political nature. Which is fine, I have no issues on the person's side. So, and nor should we make that an issue. In America, they do make it an issue. Over here, we have far more other things to consider because we're at the tops. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So, good intentions do not automatically imply that somebody is the best suited for a particular job. I may think that I can do great teaching at LUMS, but at the end of the day, my intentions may all be in vain because I may not be a good teacher. I may not know my subject well enough. And I think, which is what I was talking about. If Imran had spent more time in the last 15 years in this country doing politics instead of spending a lot of time partly on personal issues and partly on fundraising for his social causes, he might have been clearer in his mind. He ended up being a social activist who wanted to then transform politics. It's a difficult journey. Often the experiences of being a social reformer or a philanthropist or somebody who tries to do good, like Edie, are very different from the compulsions of politics. And I think Imran learned that soon enough when he found, as he put it, कि मैं फरिश्ते कहाँ से लाऊं? Originally the यही plan था कि फरिश्ते आएंगे PTI में और फरिश्ते PTI को चलाएंगे. And in the end it turned out good lotas or bad lotas. That's where the debate ended up. And I think he's now realizing what the whole game is about. मुझे याद है कि when this issue of KP government came up, some PTI वाले asked me, what do you think? We can easily form government there. I said, don't touch it. Don't touch it with the past. That's the hub of all the problems. This is not your time to be tested in such dire circumstances. Let Nawaz Sharif handle this. He will fail. You will be sitting outside with the ability to overthrow him in QP. But don't jump into this. It's a quicksand. Let somebody else try it. But he was in too much of a hurry. And similarly, some people in the Muslim League do ask me. And I gave them the same advice and I said, you're absolutely correct. We will not touch it. Let him not. And believe you me, one could put together a talk. That was not the issue. Maulana and others were easily amenable to all sorts of inducements. And were dying to be induced. But Nawaz stayed away. So politically he did the wise thing. Imran is in the middle of a very difficult situation, both in terms of his party and in terms of the KP's peculiar situation as being a frontline for war on terror, which is why he has a serious problem articulating what is needed. On the one hand is the KP, and on the other hand is the rest of Pakistan. So I I don't think that that argument goes too far. As I said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I would rather that we tried and tested our people out, that they were held accountable, and that we judge them by what they did rather than what they said about their past experience.
Najam sir,
If anybody could have a strategic interest in Pakistan, in the long term it could be the Americans, and that could be for two reasons. The Hindu Kush, which straddles Afghanistan and Balochistan, is probably the biggest potential site for that material oxide, which the big factories are made.